No one truly understands how much a touch can destroy until they discover that it can save as well. This is the true story of a man who spent his entire life running from his own body until love forced him to face everything he feared the most. And when a viral video exposed his greatest secret to the world, no one was prepared for what happened next. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, activate the notification bell, and drop some hype in the comments so this story can reach even more people. The sound of Kelsey's heels striking the polished marble echoed like small detonations across the lobby of McCall Industries. The building rose like a cathedral of glass and steel in the financial heart of Seattle, where the gray skies seemed to conspire with the architecture to create an atmosphere of unreachable power. Kelsey gripped the strap of her bag tightly, feeling the worn texture of the synthetic leather against her damp palm. This was not her world. The receptionist lifted her. Dries. She was a woman with sharp features, blonde hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked painful, and wine-colored nails tapping against the keyboard. The look she gave Kelsey was quick, surgical, assessing the blazer bought on clearance, the black skirt trying to imitate expensive tailoring, the shoes polished to a shine that fooled no one. First day, her voice was cold, almost bored. Yes, I am the new administrative assistant. Kelsey kept her chin lifted, refusing to let the inferiority swelling inside spill outward. The receptionist nodded and pointed to the elevators in the back with a silver pen. 23rd floor, executive department. Mr. McCall is already waiting. The mention of the name made something tighten inside Kelsey. Andrew McCall, the executive, the man she had heard only fragments about, whispers, half-sentences that never formed a complete portrait. Powerful, brilliant, untouchable, literally untouchable, according to the rumors. She crossed the lobby and stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut without a sound, and the cabin began to rise with a smoothness that contrasted with the tension building in her chest. Kelsey saw her own reflection in the mirrored walls. Brown hair pulled into a simple ponytail, discreet makeup, nothing that drew attention, nothing that screamed, "I do not belong here." But she knew, and she suspected everyone else would know too. When the doors opened on the 23rd floor, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt colder, denser. Glass walls separated meeting rooms where executives in dark suits spoke in low tones. The charcoal carpet swallowed the sound of footsteps. Everything there breathed discretion, efficiency, absolute control. A woman in her early 30s approached. She wore a fitted light green dress, black hair falling in perfect waves over her shoulders, and she held a clipboard to her chest as if it were armor. Kelsey Haynes? Yes, I am Maya. I work in corporate relations. I was assigned to orient you today. Her voice was professional, yet there was something in her eyes, a spark of curiosity, perhaps even compassion. Come with me. I will take you to him. They walked down a corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly. Maya did not look at Kelsey while she spoke, keeping her gaze fixed ahead, as if choosing each word carefully. There are a few things you need to know before you go in. Her voice dropped. Mr. McCall is particular, very particular. He has rules, and the main one is do not touch him. Kelsey frowned. What do you mean, do not touch? Maya stopped in front of a frosted glass door and turned, finally facing Kelsey. Do not shake his hand. Do not pat his shoulder. Do not make any kind of physical contact ever. He does not touch anyone and no one touches him. It has been 10 years. Why? No one knows. Or at least no one says. Maya shrugged, but there was something heavier in her. Expression, something unspoken. Some think it is arrogance. Others think it is a kind of phobia. I think it is trauma. But that does not matter. What matters is that you follow the rule. A strange chill ran down Kelsey's spine. 10 years. An entire decade without touching another person. No handshake, no hug, nothing. What kind of life was that? Maya knocked on the door. A male voice, deep, controlled, responded from inside. Come in. The office was enormous, yet strangely empty. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seattle, with the Space Needle visible in the distance like a silver needle piercing the clouds. The desk was dark wood, polished to a shine that reflected the cool light of the recessed fixtures overhead. And behind it, with his back turned, stood the man himself, Andrew McCall adjusted a document inside a folder, his broad shoulders framed by a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly. He did not turn right away. There was something deliberate in that delay, as if he were granting her the time to absorb his presence before she had to face him. When he finally turned, Kelsey caught her breath. He was tall, taller than she expected, with an upright posture that conveyed authority effortlessly. His hair was dark brown, swept back with a subtle gel, revealing angular features, but his eyes were what stood out the most. So intense it felt as though he could read every thought passing through her mind. Yet, there was something else in those eyes, something that contradicted the image of absolute control, something that looked tired. "Kelsey Haynes," he said. He already knew who she was. "Yes, sir. Sit." She obeyed, sliding into the leather chair on the opposite side of the desk. Andrew remained standing for a few extra seconds, as if deciding something before finally taking his seat. He clasped his hands on the table, and that was when Kelsey noticed. He was wearing gloves, thin, elegant black leather gloves that looked like a second skin. Inside his office, in the month of April. "Did you read the contract you signed?" His voice was firm, free of unnecessary inflection. "I did." "Then you know what I expect from you. Efficiency, discretion, punctuality." He paused and something shifted in his expression, an almost imperceptible shadow crossing his face. "And respect for personal boundaries." Kelsey nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" He tilted his head, slightly, as if testing her sincerity. "Because I do not usually repeat instructions. That will not be necessary." There was a silence, not the comfortable kind that accompanies natural conversation, but the kind that occupies space, that weighs on one's shoulders, demanding something be said to break it. Andrew observed her, and Kelsey refused to look away. She did not know what she was proving, but she sensed that looking down now would feel like admitting defeat. He was the one who broke the stare, reaching for a folder on the desk and extending it toward her, not for her to take from his hands. He placed it on the desk, sliding it to the middle, leaving a safe distance between them. "These are the quarterly reports I need you to review. I want inconsistencies marked and an executive summary by the end of the day." Kelsey took the folder and opened it, flipping through the documents. Numbers, charts, projections. Heavy work, but nothing she could not handle. "Any questions?" He was already rising, signaling the meeting was over. "No, sir." He nodded and walked toward the window, turning his back to her again, his hands clasped behind him, still protected by the gloves. Kelsey hesitated, then stood and walked toward the door. That was when it happened. She was almost out when she noticed his tie was crooked. Not much, just enough to break the immaculate symmetry he seemed to cultivate. It was a small detail, insignificant to most people. But to Kelsey, who had grown up straightening her father's collar before he left for work, it was the kind of thing impossible to ignore. Without thinking, without processing, she turned back and walked toward him. "Excuse me, your tie is..." She reached out and adjusted the knot, her fingers brushing briefly against the collar of his shirt. The world froze. Andrew went absolutely still. It was not a sudden movement, not a shout, not a dramatic recoil. It was worse. It was the total absence of reaction, as if his body had simply shut down. His eyes widened, not with anger, but with something close to pure panic. His breath caught, audible in the sudden silence of the room. Kelsey stepped back immediately, her heart racing. I'm sorry, I didn't..." He did not answer. He remained frozen, staring at her as if she had just sliced straight through him. His gloved hands trembled faintly at his sides. Then, without a word, he turned and walked quickly into the private bathroom in the corner of the office, closing the door behind him. Kelsey stood there, alone, the sound of her own breathing too loud in her ears. What had she done? What on earth had she just done? Outside the office, Maya waited against the wall. When she saw the look on Kelsey's face, her eyes widened. "You touched him." It was not a question. I forgot. It was an impulse. Kelsey ran her hands over her face, feeling the adrenaline still rushing through her veins. It was a reflex. His tie was crooked. Maya exhaled slowly, as if preparing to deliver bad news. "You just did something no one has done in the last 10 years. But it was just a touch. I barely brushed him. For him, there is no just a touch. Maya glanced at the closed office door, then back at Kelsey. Come on, let's get you to your workstation, and pray he doesn't fire you before the end of the day. Kelsey followed Maya down the corridor, but her mind was still trapped in that moment. In the way his body had frozen, in the way his eyes had widened, not with anger, but with something that felt terrified. And the gloves. Always the gloves. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Kelsey sat at a small workstation near the conference room, reviewing the reports as instructed, though she could not fully concentrate. Around her, the office ran like a well-oiled machine. Assistants hurried back and forth with folders and tablets. Phones rang. Low conversations filled the space. And everyone, absolutely everyone, seemed to be looking at her. It was Maya who appeared in the middle of the afternoon, holding 2 cups of coffee. She set one in front of Kelsey and sat on the edge of the desk, lowering her voice. You became a legend in less than 3 hours. Kelsey looked up. What? The girl who touched Andrew McCall. Everyone is talking. That is ridiculous. Ridiculous or not, it is the truth. Maya took a sip of coffee. Do you know how many people tried to shake his hand in the last few years? Hundreds. Do you know how many succeeded? 0. He always dodges, always finds a way to avoid it. But you just went in and did it. It wasn't on purpose. I know, but that doesn't change the fact that it happened. Maya hesitated, then leaned closer. He still hasn't left the room. Kelsey felt her chest tighten. Since I left? Since you left. No one has gone in. No one has come out. He canceled all his afternoon meetings. Because of me. Maya did not respond, but her expression said everything. The rest of the day dragged like an eternity. Kelsey finished the reports, marked the inconsistencies, wrote the executive summary, and placed everything in a tray outside Andrew's door, just as Maya had instructed. She did not see him again, did not hear his voice. It was as if he had simply vanished. When the clock finally struck 6, Kelsey grabbed her bag and walked to the elevator, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. She pressed the button and waited, her shoulders tense, her jaw tight. The doors opened. She stepped inside, and as they began to close, she glanced one last time at the 23rd floor. Through the frosted glass of Andrew's office, she saw a silhouette. He stood there, his back to the door, staring out at the city beyond, motionless, alone. And somehow, that image haunted her far more than anything he could have said. The doors closed, and the elevator began its descent. Kelsey did not know it, but at that moment, inside that silent office, Andrew McCall could still feel the ghost of her touch on his neck. And for the first time in 10 years, he did not know whether he wanted that sensation to fade. The day began with rain. Kelsey woke to the sound of droplets tapping against the window of the tiny apartment she shared with her younger sister, and for a moment she considered calling the office, inventing a fever, anything, that would spare her from going back to that place. But she was not a coward. She never had been. So she got up, showered, put on the same blazer she always wore, because it was the only one she had, and went out to face whatever waited for her. The subway was crowded as always, bodies pressed against one another, the smell of reheated coffee and cheap perfume mixing with the metallic odor of the tracks. Kelsey held the strap of her bag and closed her eyes, trying to prepare herself. Mentally, nothing serious had happened. It had only been a touch. People touched one another all the time. It was not a big deal. Except it was. When she reached the McCall Industries building, the rain had shifted into a fine mist that fogged the windows and left the air tasting like metal. Kelsey crossed the lobby quickly, avoiding the receptionist's gaze, and stepped into the elevator. 3 people were inside. 2 women in gray suits and a man wearing a navy blue tie. The moment she entered, their conversation stopped. It was not overt, it was not dramatic, just a sudden silence. The kind that makes your skin prickle because you know it is about you. The 2 women exchanged a quick glance. The man pretended to be absorbed in his phone. Kelsey pressed the button for the 23rd floor and fixed her eyes on the numbers lighting up as they ascended. When the doors opened, she stepped out without looking back, but she heard the whisper, soft, almost inaudible, yet clear enough. That's her. The executive department corridor was busier than she remembered. Assistants moved around carrying folders, tablets, cups of coffee. Kelsey walked past a group of 3 women near the water dispenser. Their conversation died the moment they saw her. They did not look away. They simply stood there watching her with a mix of curiosity and something that looked like disdain. Kelsey went to the workstation they had assigned her. She turned on the computer, arranged the documents she needed to review, and tried to dive into the work. But it was impossible to ignore the feeling of being observed, like an animal at a zoo, like something out of place. Maya appeared after half an hour, holding a coffee and wearing an expression caught between solidarity and restrained amusement. "Good morning, celebrity." Kelsey looked up. "I am not in the mood. I can imagine." Maya pulled a chair and sat down, lowering her voice. "But you need to understand what happened on Friday. It is not normal. People are shocked. They are curious, and some are jealous." "Jealous?" Kelsey almost laughed. "Of what? Making the man collapse? Of getting close." Maya shrugged. "Andrew McCall is untouchable. He always has been. And you broke that in under 5 minutes. There are people here who have worked with him for years and never got within a meter of him. That is unhealthy. That is reality." Maya took a sip of her coffee. "He arrived early today, 6 in the morning, locked himself in his office and has not come out since. Cancelled the 8 o'clock meeting. Ignored 3 calls from the board. He is different." Kelsey felt something tighten in her chest. "Different how?" "I cannot explain. I just know he is not well." Before Kelsey could respond, Andrew's office door opened. He stepped out, and the entire hallway seemed to freeze. Conversations stopped. Footsteps halted. It was as though his mere presence drained the oxygen from the air. He wore a black suit today, immaculate as always, but there was something different. The tie was perfectly aligned. The gloves were there, covering his hands like a second skin. But his face looked tired. Not physically. A deeper tiredness, the kind that comes from within. Andrew walked down the corridor without looking at anyone, eyes fixed straight ahead, posture rigid. He passed Kelsey's desk without turning his head, but she saw. She saw the way his shoulders tensed as he passed. She saw the way his jaw tightened. She saw the way his gloved fingers curled into fists for the briefest moment before relaxing again. He was pretending nothing had happened, pretending he was fine, but he was not. The morning dragged on. Kelsey reviewed contracts, organized schedules, answered emails, mechanical work that required little thought, which was good because most of her attention was elsewhere. On the way, people looked at her. On the way, conversations died when she approached. On the way, Andrew avoided any chance of crossing paths with her. Until, at 11:30, Kelsey had to go to the internal cafeteria to retrieve documents that had been misplaced there. The cafeteria took up half the 22nd floor, an open space with glass tables, designer chairs, and an Italian coffee machine that looked more expensive than her car. About 10 people were scattered around, most in small groups talking quietly. Kelsey entered, spotted the documents on a table at the back, and walked toward them. That was when she heard the voice. Careful not to touch her. Might be contagious. Muffled laughter. Kelsey stopped. She did not turn, did not give them the satisfaction of seeing that she heard. She simply picked up the documents and walked out, chin lifted, steps firm. But inside, something burned. It was in the elevator that the first collision happened. She was returning to the 23rd floor, alone in the cabin, when the doors began to close and a gloved hand slid between them at the last second, forcing them open again. Andrew stepped inside. The space, which seconds before had felt spacious, shrank instantly. He did not look at her. He pressed the button for the 23rd floor even though it was already lit, and stood on the opposite side of the cabin as far from her as possible. The doors closed and the elevator began to ascend. There was a silence so profound Kelsey could hear her own breathing. She could hear his breathing. The air felt thick, dense, as if the space between them were made of something solid neither knew how to cross. She looked at his reflection in the wall mirror. He was tense, rigid shoulders, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the numbers flickering above the door. But then, for a fraction of a second, his gaze shifted. Not much, just enough to land on her through the reflection. It was quick, so quick. Kelsey almost thought she imagined it, but she had not. Because when their eyes met in the mirror, something passed between them. Something nameless. Something that made her heartbeat stumble. He looked away immediately, fixing his gaze back on the numbers. The doors opened on the 23rd floor. Andrew stepped out first without a word, without looking back. Kelsey remained still for a moment, processing what had just happened. Then she walked out too, heading in the opposite direction. But the sensation lingered. The sensation that something had shifted. The afternoon brought more collisions. At the copier, where Kelsey was printing reports, and Andrew appeared to pick up documents. They did not touch, did not speak, but he stood there waiting only a meter away, and the proximity felt almost physical. Kelsey could feel his presence like heat radiating, could feel the tension emanating from him in invisible waves. In the corridor where she was walking, back to her desk, and he was coming from the opposite direction. There was not enough space for both to pass without one stepping aside. It was Andrew who moved, pressing against the wall, but not fast enough. Kelsey's shoulder brushed his for a fraction of a second. He stopped, completely, as though he had forgotten how to walk. Kelsey stopped too, turning to look at him. For a moment their eyes met truly. Not through a reflection, not from the corner of their eyes, but directly. And what she saw there left her breathless. It was not anger, it was not arrogance. It was something much more dangerous. It was confusion. It was fear. It was something that looked like pain. "I am sorry," Kelsey said softly, even though she was not sure what she was apologizing for. Andrew did not respond. He only continued walking, his steps quick, almost desperate, and Kelsey remained there, alone in the hallway, with the feeling that she had just seen something he never intended to show. The rest of the day was silent torture. Kelsey tried to focus on her work, but it was impossible to ignore his presence. Even when Andrew was locked inside his office, she could feel him, feel the weight of his attention, even if he was not looking. Or perhaps because he was trying so desperately not to look, she felt it even more. At 5 in the afternoon, Maya appeared again, this time without coffee, wearing a serious expression. "He wants to speak with you." Kelsey's heart leapt. "When?" "Now." Kelsey stood, smoothed her skirt, drew a deep breath. She walked to Andrew's door and knocked. His voice came from inside, controlled as always. "Come in." She entered. The office looked exactly as it had on Friday. Enormous windows, dark wooden desk. He stood with his back to her, staring out at the city beyond. But this time, when he turned around, there was something different in his expression. Something that looked like determination. "Sit." Kelsey obeyed. Andrew remained standing for a few more seconds, as if choosing his words carefully. Then he finally spoke. "What happened on Friday cannot happen again." Direct, no hesitation. "I know," Kelsey replied. "You do?" He tilted his head slightly. "Because it does not seem to me that you understand the gravity." "I understand perfectly. It was a mistake. It will not happen again." "It was not just a mistake." His voice came out lower, almost dangerous. "It was an intrusion." The word hit Kelsey like a slap. She blinked, processing. "Intrusion? I have rules, boundaries, and you ignored them. I did not know. You know now." He cut her off, but not in anger. There was something else there, something that sounded like exhaustion. "So I will make it clear. Keep your distance always. No matter the reason, no matter the situation, you do not touch me, ever." Kelsey rose slowly, feeling something ignite inside her. It was not anger. It was something more complicated. Frustration woven with something that felt like compassion. "You are not arrogant," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. "Everyone thinks you are, but you are not. You are afraid." Andrew froze. "I do not know of what," Kelsey continued, "and I will not ask, but I see it, and I feel sorry for you." The silence that followed was absolute. Andrew did not move, did not speak. He simply stood there, looking at her with an expression Kelsey could not decipher. "You may go," he said at last, his voice emerging hoarse. Kelsey nodded and walked toward the door, but before leaving she paused and looked back. "I would not have hurt you, you know." He did not answer, and when Kelsey left the office, closing the door behind her, she did not see the way Andrew shut his eyes. She did not see the tremor in his hands. She did not see the way he braced himself against the desk. as if his legs had forgotten how to hold the weight of his own body, because for the first time in 10 years someone had seen through him. And that was terrifying. Wednesday dawned with a clear sky, the kind of cold blue only Seattle could produce in early May. Kelsey arrived at the office 15 minutes early, not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because sleeping was becoming increasingly difficult. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands trembled inside the gloves, the way he looked at her as if she were simultaneously the most dangerous and the most fascinating thing in the world. The 23rd floor was quiet at that hour. Only a few assistants had arrived, preparing coffee, organizing papers, turning on computers. Kelsey sat at her workstation, powered up the machine, and tried to concentrate on the emails that had piled up overnight. That was when she heard his voice. Not loud, not close, but unmistakable. It came from the conference room at the end of the hallway, where the doctor was slightly ajar. Kelsey did not want to eavesdrop, it was none of her business, but his voice had a different tone, something she had not heard before, something that sounded worn. "I'm not going to discuss this again, Daniel." A pause, then another voice. Male, younger, slightly exasperated. "You cannot keep going like this forever. I can do whatever I want." "Of course you can, but that does not mean you should." The other voice sighed. "It has been 10 years, Andrew. 10 years. Dad would not want—" "Do not talk about him." Andrew's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Do not talk about what he would want." A chill ran down Kelsey's spine. Dad. So there was something there, something tied to his father. She knew she should step away, go back to her desk, pretend she had not heard anything. But she stood still, holding her breath. "I am only trying to help you. I did not ask for help. You never do." The younger man's voice softened now, almost gentle. "But you still need it." There was a long silence, then footsteps. The conference room door opened fully and a man walked out. He was younger than Andrew, maybe in his early 30s, with slightly lighter brown hair and an expression caught between frustration and genuine concern. He passed by Kelsey without noticing her, heading quickly toward the elevators. Andrew stepped out seconds later, and he stopped when he saw her. For a moment, neither of them moved. He watched her, with that intensity that made Kelsey's skin prickle, as if calculating how much she had heard, how much she knew, how much of a danger she might be. "Good morning," Kelsey said, keeping her voice neutral. Andrew did not respond right away. He simply continued looking at her, as if deciding something. Then finally he gave a short nod and walked back to his office, closing the door behind him. Kelsey released the breath she did not know she had been holding. The day went on like the others. Meetings she did not attend but needed to organize notes for. Endless emails, contracts to review, calls to transfer. Tedious work, but she did not mind. In fact, she preferred it that way. She preferred having something concrete to focus on, something that kept her from thinking too much about the man locked in the glass office at the end of the hallway. But then, around 3 in the afternoon, something happened. Kelsey was in the kitchenette making coffee when Ian, the chief operating officer, walked in. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair, expensive suits, and a presence that commanded attention without having to ask for it. He nodded at Kelsey, grabbed a cup, and began pouring himself coffee. "You are the new assistant." It was not a question, but Kelsey answered anyway. "Yes, sir. How is it going so far?" "Challenging." Ian gave a faint smile. "I can imagine. Working with Andrew is not for the faint of heart." Kelsey did not know how to respond to that, so she simply took a sip of her coffee. "He is a good man," Ian continued, stirring sugar into his cup. "People do not see that. They think he is cold, distant, arrogant, but he is not. He just carries things most of us could never bear." Kelsey turned her head, now fully attentive. "What kind of things?" Ian hesitated, as if deciding how much he should reveal. "Have you heard about his father?" "No. He died 10 years ago. Industrial accident. One of the company's factories back then had severe structural issues. Management knew but ignored it because fixing the problems would cost too much." Ian took a sip of coffee, his expression dark. There was a collapse. 3 workers were trapped inside. Andrew's father was visiting the factory that day. He went in to try to get the men out. Kelsey felt her chest tighten. Did he manage to? He managed to get 2 of them out. The third, Ian shook his head. He and the third did not make it. The structure gave way completely. Andrew was there. He saw everything. He was one of the first to reach them when they finally cleared a path through the rubble. The kitchenette felt colder all of a sudden. Kelsey wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, trying to absorb the warmth. Andrew held his father's hand while the paramedics tried to stabilize him. Ian continued, his voice low, but it was too late. He died there, with Andrew holding his hand. Kelsey closed her eyes for a moment, the image forming in her mind with painful clarity. Andrew, younger, desperate, holding his father's hand as life slipped away. After that, Ian said, he was never the same. He stopped touching people, stopped allowing anyone to touch him. It is as if he associates physical contact with loss, with pain. Trauma-triggered OCD, Kelsey murmured, almost to herself. Ian raised his eyebrows. You know the term. I read about it. Emotional contamination. When the mind associates a physical trigger with a traumatic memory so strong that the body reacts as though it is reliving the event. Exactly. Ian placed his cup in the sink. Andrew never talks about it openly, but we all know, and we respect it, because he deserves that. Kelsey nodded, unable to form words. Everything made sense now. The gloves, the distance, the panic when she touched him. It was not arrogance. It never had been. It was survival. Ian walked to the door, then paused and looked back at her. You seem like a good person, Kelsey. So let me give you a piece of advice. Do not try to save him. People like Andrew do not want to be saved. They only want to be left alone. He left, leaving Kelsey alone in the kitchenette with a coffee that had already gone cold and a weight in her chest that felt impossible to carry. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Kelsey tried to work, but Ian's words echoed in her mind. He held his father's hand while life slipped away. Physical contact tied to loss, to pain. How did someone survive that? How did someone move forward while carrying something so heavy? It was nearly the end of the workday when it happened. Kelsey was organizing documents near the conference room when she saw Maya coming out of one of the smaller offices. She was laughing at something someone had said, her eyes bright, and without thinking, she placed a hand on a colleague's shoulder as she passed him. A simple gesture, casual, human. Kelsey thought nothing of it, but then she heard a sound, coming from Andrew's office. She turned her head and looked through the glass. He was standing in the middle of the room, staring down the hallway, staring at Maya, staring at the touch. And then she saw his expression change. It was not dramatic, not explosive, but it was unmistakable. His jaw tightened, his shoulders went rigid. His hands curled into fists so tight that even through the gloves, Kelsey could see the knuckles turning white. He was having a trigger. Andrew turned abruptly, walking toward the desk and bracing his hands on its surface, as if he needed something solid to anchor himself. His breathing was uneven. Kelsey could see his chest rising and falling irregularly through the glass. She did not think. She simply acted. She walked to his door and knocked. No response. She knocked again, harder this time. Mr. McCall. Silence. Andrew. The door opened suddenly. He stood there, blocking the entrance, his face tense, his eyes shining with something dangerously close to desperation. What do you want? His voice came out hoarse, almost aggressive. I saw. You seemed. I am fine. You are not. Kelsey took a step closer, but not enough to invade his space. You are having a panic trigger. Get out. No. He blinked, as if he had not expected that answer. What? I said no. Kelsey crossed her arms. You can fire me later if you want, but right now I'm not leaving. Because you need someone here, even if you will not admit it. Andrew stared at her for a long moment, and Kelsey saw the battle happening inside him. She saw pride fighting against need. She saw fear battling something that looked like relief. Then he stepped back, leaving room for her to enter. Kelsey walked into the room and closed the door behind her. Andrew had turned around already, facing the window, his shoulders tight, his hands still trembling slightly. I know, she said softly. About your father. He froze. Ian told me, not everything, but enough. Andrew did not turn, did not speak. He simply stood there unmoving, as if any shift might shatter him entirely. You held his hand, Kelsey continued, her voice softer now. At the end, and ever since, any touch makes you relive that moment. Stop, the word slipped out like a fractured whisper. It is not your fault. You know that, right? What happened to him? The negligence, the accident. None of it was your fault. You do not know anything. His voice was loaded now, heavy with something that sounded like raw pain. You were not there. You did not see. I did not. But I see you now, and I see what it is doing to you. Andrew finally turned, and what Kelsey saw in his face made her forget how to breathe. It was not anger, not pride. It was exhaustion, pure and absolute. You think I do not know this is irrational? He ran a hand over his face, the dark glove stark against his skin. You think I have not tried, that I did not spend years trying to convince myself it is just a touch, that it means nothing, that it will not hurt me? But it does not work. It does not work. He let out a bitter laugh. Because every time someone touches me, I feel it. I feel his hand, cold, lifeless. I feel the weight of that moment, and I cannot make it stop. The silence that settled between them was not uncomfortable. It was heavy, yes, but not hostile. It was the kind of silence that happens when two people finally stop pretending. I am not going to touch you, Kelsey said at last, but I am also not going to pretend that I do not see it, because I see you, Andrew, and you do not have to carry this alone. He looked at her for a long moment, and something passed between them, something nameless, something that felt both dangerous and necessary. You should leave, he said, but his voice was different now, softer, almost grateful. I know. Kelsey walked to the door, then paused and looked back. But I am not going to. And when she stepped out, closing the door behind her, Andrew stayed where he was, standing in the middle of the room, staring at the place where she had been. For the first time in 10 years, he did not feel completely alone, and that was terrifying. The days began to blend into one another in a strange way. Monday became Tuesday, Tuesday became Friday, and Kelsey realized she was beginning to know Andrew in ways no one else in the office did. Not because he talked to her, he did not. Not because he sought her presence, he never did. But because she paid attention. She noticed, for example, that he always arrived before 7 in the morning. Always. No matter the day of the week. He parked the black car in the same spot, walked to the elevator with tense shoulders, and disappeared onto the 23rd floor before most people had even left their homes. She noticed that he never had lunch in the cafeteria. He always ordered food to his office, but rarely finished it. She saw the untouched containers being collected at night. She noticed that he wore the gloves all the time now, not only in social situations, but always, as if the simple possibility of accidental contact was too unbearable to risk. She noticed that he avoided the elevator during peak hours. He went up and down the stairs when there were too many people around, even if that meant 23 floors. She noticed that he never looked directly at her when they spoke, but always knew exactly where she was, as if there were an internal radar tracking her position at all times. And she noticed that, on Thursday afternoons, he worsened, more tense, more closed off, as if Thursday carried something he could not escape. It was on one of those Thursdays, 3 weeks after the first accidental touch, that Kelsey decided to do something about it. The afternoon had begun gray, with heavy clouds hanging over Seattle like a silent threat. Around 5, the rain started. Not the light drizzle typical of the city, but a real storm, thunder cracking the sky and lightning illuminating the surrounding buildings. Kelsey was finishing up filing documents when she realized Andrew's office was empty. She frowned. He never left early. Never. She picked up the phone and dialed his extension. Nothing. She tried the corporate cell. Straight to voicemail. Strange. Maya walked past her desk, already wearing her coat, ready to leave. Did you see Mr. McCall go out? Maya shook her head. No, but I heard someone say they saw him heading down to the parking garage about 20 minutes ago. Why? Just curious. But it was not just curiosity, it was something else. Something that made Kelsey grab her own bag, shut down her computer, and head to the elevator with a strange feeling. She should not care. It was not her problem. Andrew McCall was a grown man, perfectly capable of taking care of himself. But Thursday. He always got worse on Thursdays. The underground parking garage was dark and quiet, lit only by fluorescent lights humming softly overhead. The smell of damp concrete and fuel lingered in the air. Kelsey walked between the cars, searching without knowing exactly what for. And then she saw him. Andrew was leaning against his car, a black sedan that probably cost more than she earned in 5 years. His hands, were braced on the hood, his gloved fingers pressed against the metal as if he needed that anchor point to keep from collapsing. His head was lowered, his shoulders rising and falling in erratic breaths. Kelsey stopped a few feet away, her heart pounding. He was having a crisis, a real one. Andrew? He did not turn, did not respond. He only stood there, trembling slightly, his breathing faster, shorter. Kelsey took a step closer, slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. Andrew, can you hear me? Nothing. She looked around. The parking garage was empty. No one else. No one to help. Just her. And a man who looked like he was drowning in dry air. Kelsey took a deep breath and stepped close enough to stand beside him, but still leaving enough distance not to touch him. She could see his face now, angled downward, his eyes squeezed shut, his jaw locked tight. Beads of sweat slid down his temple, mixing with the rainwater dripping through the small cracks in the garage ceiling. "Look at me," she said softly. He shook his head, a barely perceptible refusal. "Andrew, look at me." This time he obeyed, lifting his face slowly, and what she saw made her forget how to breathe. His eyes were wide, lost, as if he no longer knew where he was, as if he were trapped somewhere inside his own mind and could not find the way out. "You are having a panic attack," Kelsey said, keeping her voice calm, steady. "But it will pass. I promise it will pass. I cannot." His voice came out broken, raw. "I cannot breathe." "Yes, you can. You just need to slow down. Breathe with me, all right? Inhale." She inhaled slowly, deeply, exaggerating the rise of her chest so he could copy the movement. Andrew tried to follow, but the breath broke, jagged and uneven. "Try again. Inhale." She breathed in again. This time he managed to imitate her, pulling the air in shakily but with more control. "That is it. Now exhale slowly, very slowly." She released the air, and he did the same. His breathing was still uneven, but it was improving. Kelsey continued, inhaling and exhaling, creating a rhythm he could latch onto. 1 minute, 2, 3. Little by little, his breaths began to stabilize. His shoulders relaxed slightly. His hands stopped shaking. Kelsey did not stop. She kept breathing with him, building an invisible bridge between their bodies, a connection that did not require touch to exist. And Andrew followed, as if her voice were the only thing anchoring him to reality. When his breathing finally returned to something close to normal, he closed his eyes and let his head fall forward, exhausted. Kelsey stood beside him, waiting, giving space, giving time. "Thank you." The word was so soft she almost missed it. "You do not have to thank me." "I do." He opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked, without turning away, without hiding. "You did not have to be here." "I know." "Then why are you?" Kelsey hesitated. There were 1,000 answers she could give. Because she was worried. Because it was the right thing to do. Because no one deserved to go through that alone. But none felt enough. So she told the truth. "Because I wanted to." Something shifted in his expression. Not much. Just a tiny softening around the eyes. As if that answer had touched something he was not ready for. "Thursday is the anniversary of his death," Andrew said suddenly, his voice still hoarse but steadier now. "It has been 10 years today." Kelsey felt her chest tighten. 10 years, and he still carried it as if it had happened yesterday. "I wake up and I know it is Thursday, and the entire day, it is as though I am waiting for something bad to happen, waiting for someone to disappear." He ran a hand over his face, the dark glove stark against his pale skin. "It is irrational, I know it is, but I cannot stop it." "It is not irrational," Kelsey said softly. "It is trauma. Trauma does not care about logic." He looked at her and there was something there, something that resembled surprise, as if no one had ever said those words to him before. "You are not afraid of me?" The question came out hesitant, vulnerable. "Afraid? Why would I be?" "Because I am broken." Kelsey shook her head, feeling something warm expand in her chest. You are not broken, Andrew. You are human, and being broken and being human are often the same thing. The silence that fell between them was different this time. It was not tense, it was not uncomfortable, it was almost intimate, as though something had shifted, something invisible yet undeniable. I do not know how to do this, Andrew said at last, his voice quieter. Letting someone in. You do not have to know, you just need to stop locking the door. He let out a short, humorless laugh, but there was something close to acceptance beneath it. You are infuriatingly wise, and you are infuriatingly stubborn. This time the laugh was real, brief but real, and Kelsey felt something warm bloom inside her at the sound. Andrew stepped away from the car, standing fully upright now, his posture still slightly unsteady but far better than before. He looked at her, and there was something different in his eyes. No longer distrust, no longer fear, something that looked like recognition. Are you going to be all right to drive? Kelsey asked. I will. He hesitated, then added, And you came by subway? I did. Let me drive you home. Kelsey blinked, surprised. You do not have to. I know, but I want to. And there was something in the way he said it, something so sincere and unguarded, that Kelsey could not refuse. They got into the car in silence. Andrew started the engine, adjusted the mirrors, and began to drive. The rain was still falling heavily outside, drumming against the windows in a rhythmic, strangely comforting pattern. Kelsey gave him the address, and he nodded, guiding the car out of the garage. For the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of rain and the soft hum of the engine filled the space. But it was not uncomfortable silence. It was the kind that happens when two people are comfortable enough not to feel the need to fill every second with words. Andrew was the one who broke it. Do you have siblings? The question caught Kelsey off guard. Yes, a younger sister, Sophia. Are you two close? Very. She is 19, in college now, nursing. You helped pay for it? Kelsey hesitated, then nodded. My mother passed away a few years ago. Sophia needed someone to take care of her. Andrew glanced at her briefly, then turned his eyes back to the road. That must have been difficult. It was, but it was worth it. Kelsey smiled softly. She is incredible. Much better than I was at her age. I doubt that. The comment was so unexpected that Kelsey turned her head to look at him. He was not smiling, but there was something gentler in his expression. Something that looked almost like affection. You have this thing, Andrew continued, keeping his eyes on the road. This ability to see people, to really see them. It is rare. Kelsey felt her face warm. You do too. You just pretend you do not. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. Touché. They reached Kelsey's building a few minutes later. Andrew parked in front, turned off the engine, but neither of them moved to get out. They sat there in the quiet car, the rain still falling outside, creating a kind of bubble around them. Thank you, Kelsey said finally. For the ride. Thank you, Andrew replied. For staying. She opened the door, but before stepping out, she paused and looked at him. Andrew? Yes? Thursday is just another day. It does not define you. It does not define what happened. It is only Thursday. He held her gaze for a long moment, and Kelsey saw something shift there, something that looked close to hope. Good night, Kelsey. Good night. She stepped out and ran toward the entrance of the building, the rain drenching her within seconds. When she reached the door and looked back, the car was still there. Andrew was still there, watching her through the fogged glass. And for some reason, that made Kelsey's heart race in a way she was not ready to name. When she finally entered the apartment, removing her wet coat and soaked shoes, Sophia was in the living room studying with books spread across the coffee table. You are soaked. I know. Kelsey hung the coat on the rack and went to the kitchen to grab a towel. Rough day? Kelsey stopped, considering the question. She thought of the parking garage, the panic attack, the way Andrew looked at her when she said she was there because she wanted to be, the way he breathed with her, as if her voice were the only thing keeping him together. The ride, home, the way he said her name. No, she answered finally, drying her hair with the towel. It was different. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Different good or different bad? Kelsey did not answer, but the small smile that appeared on her lips said everything. Across town, Andrew walked into his empty apartment. removed the gloves for the first time that day, and looked at his hands. They were no longer trembling. For the first time on a Thursday in 10 years, he felt steady. And when he went to sleep that night, for the first time in a long while, he did not dream of his father's cold hand. He dreamed of a voice, soft, steady, breathing with him in the dark. And for the first time, he did not wake afraid. Thursday is the anniversary of his death, Andrew had said, but it was only as the days passed that Kelsey understood the full weight of it. The Pacific Annual Tech Innovation Conference took place at the Grand Hyatt, an imposing hotel in downtown Seattle that seemed designed specifically to intimidate. Kelsey had never been in an event of that scale. 600 people, executives from all over the world, journalists, investors, the kind of environment where a single misstep could cost millions, or an entire career. Andrew would deliver the closing keynote on the second day. Kelsey knew because she had spent the last 2 weeks helping prepare the presentation, reviewing slides, double-checking data, ensuring that every comma, every chart, every word was exactly where it belonged. She had watched the tension building in him during those days. She had seen him rehearse alone in his office late into the night, had seen the slight tremor in his hands whenever he thought no one was looking. On the morning of the conference, a Tuesday in early June, Kelsey arrived at the hotel at 7. The main hall was enormous, with high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and endless rows of cushioned chairs facing a raised stage. Technicians rushed back and forth, adjusting lights, testing microphones, checking projectors. The energy was frantic, almost chaotic. Maya appeared beside her, holding a tablet and what seemed like her 5th cup of coffee. "Have you seen him?" Kelsey shook her head. "Not yet. He is backstage. Ask not to be disturbed until it is time." Maya took a sip of her coffee, her eyes scanning the hall. "Honestly, I've never seen him this nervous, and I've seen him close $50 million deals." Without blinking, "This is different," Kelsey said, looking at the stage. "Here he is, exposed, vulnerable." "Exactly." Maya hesitated, then lowered her voice. "He asked you to stay backstage during his presentation, in case something goes wrong." A chill ran through Kelsey. "He asked that." "He did. Said he trusts you to troubleshoot." Maya offered a half smile. "Congratulations. You are officially on the list of people Andrew McCall trusts. That list contains you." Kelsey did not know what to say to that. She simply nodded and followed Maya backstage, into an area hidden behind heavy curtains where speakers waited before going on. There were leather sofas, tables with water and coffee, and a tension so thick it could be felt in the air. Andrew was seated on one of the sofas, away from the other presenters, his eyes fixed on his phone but clearly not reading anything. He wore a flawless navy suit, a gray tie, shoes polished so sharply they reflected the light. The gloves were there, as always, but something was different today. Something in the rigidity of his shoulders, in the way his jaw was locked. He looked like a man about to step into a battlefield. Kelsey approached carefully. "Andrew?" He lifted his eyes, and for a moment she saw relief flash across his face. "You came." "Of course I did." She sat in the armchair beside him, keeping a respectful distance. "How are you feeling?" "Awful." The raw honesty caught her off guard. Andrew ran a hand over his face, exhausted. "I hate this. I hate being in front of so many people. I hate the possibility of—" He did not finish, but he did not need to. Kelsey understood. The possibility of someone trying to shake his hand. The possibility of accidental contact. The possibility of falling apart in front of 600 people. "You are going to be fine," Kelsey said firmly. "You rehearsed this 1,000 times. You know every word, every figure, and I will be right here the whole time. If something goes wrong, we fix it." Andrew looked at her for a long moment. "Why do you do that?" "Do what?" "Treat me as if I were normal." Kelsey felt something twist in her chest. "Because you are normal, Andrew. You just have scars. Everybody does." He did not respond, but the way he held her gaze told her the words meant something. The conference began at 10. Kelsey stayed backstage, watching through a narrow opening between the curtains as each speaker took the stage. They all talked about innovation, disruption, the future. The words blended together into a monotone hum until finally, at 3 in the afternoon, the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. "And now, to close our second day with a vision for the future of corporate logistics enhanced by artificial intelligence, Please welcome the CEO of McCall Industries, Andrew McCall." The hall erupted into applause. Kelsey watched Andrew stand, straighten his tie once, and inhale deeply. He cast one last glance in her direction, and Kelsey nodded, hoping the gesture conveyed confidence. He stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit him instantly, and for a second he seemed to freeze. But then he moved to the center, tested his lapel microphone, and looked at the audience. "Good afternoon." His voice came out steady, controlled. Kelsey released the breath she had not realized she was holding. He was fine. He would make it. The first 20 minutes were flawless. Andrew spoke with natural authority, moving across the stage with measured confidence. The slides appearing at the exact right moment. The data flowing clearly and persuasively. The audience was riveted. Kelsey could see it in the way they leaned forward, in the frantic note-taking. He had them in the palm of his hand. And then the microphone began to fail. It was subtle at first. Tiny bursts of static, quick enough to be dismissed. But then Andrew's voice started cutting out. Half a sentence vanished. The other half returned distorted. He stopped, frowned, tapped the microphone lightly. Nothing. Kelsey saw the panic beginning to rise in him. She saw his hands clench, saw the way he looked toward the backstage area, searching for her. She did not think. She simply moved. Kelsey slipped through the curtain and stepped onto the stage, walking quickly toward Andrew. The audience murmured, confused. Andrew looked at her with a mixture of relief and something close to desperation. "The cable is loose," she whispered, pointing to the wire that ran from the lapel mic up through his collar. "Let me fix it." He nodded, tense. Kelsey stepped closer, her fingers reaching for the collar of his suit to access the wire. It was a simple adjustment, something that should take 3 seconds. But when her fingers brushed his neck, trying to pull the cable free, it happened. The world stopped. Andrew froze entirely. It was not a conscious movement. It was as if every muscle in his body had shut down at the exact same time. His eyes widened, not with anger but with sheer panic. His breath caught, audible even without the microphone working. Kelsey felt horror spread through her like ice. No, not here. Not in front of all these people. 600 pairs of eyes were on them. 600 people witnessing the moment when Andrew McCall, relentless CEO, the man who never showed weakness, was unraveling. Kelsey saw the sweat forming on his forehead, saw the way his hands began to tremble, saw the way he seemed seconds away from a complete collapse. And so she did the only thing she could. "Sorry, everyone." Kelsey turned to the audience, forcing a casual smile. "Technical issue. We are going to sort this out backstage and be right back." Without waiting for a response, she took hold of Andrew's suit sleeve, careful not to touch his skin, and guided him gently off the stage. He did not resist. He simply followed, like an automaton, his steps mechanical, his body rigid. The moment they crossed the curtain and were hidden from the audience, Andrew stumbled. Kelsey guided him to a chair, and he fell into it as though his legs had simply given up. His breathing was rapid, erratic, coming out in irregular bursts. "Andrew, look at me." Kelsey knelt in front of him, keeping her hands away but her face close enough for him to focus on. "Breathe, like in the parking garage. Remember? Breathe with me." She inhaled slowly, exaggerating the movement. Andrew tried to follow, but his breath faltered. He tried again, faltered again. "You can do this. I know you can. Inhale." Slowly, very slowly, his breathing began to stabilize. 1 minute, 2, 3. When he finally managed to breathe relatively normally, he closed his eyes and let his head fall back, exhausted. "I ruined everything," he murmured, his voice raw. "You did not ruin anything. It was a technical issue. It happens." "No." He opened his eyes and looked at her. I froze. In front of everyone, they saw a man dealing with an unexpected situation. That is all. Andrew let out a bitter laugh. "You are good at lying." "I am not lying." He did not respond. He simply kept looking at her, and there was something different in his eyes now. Something raw, exposed, as though every defense had been ripped away at once. "I cannot go back out there," he said at last. "You can, Kelsey. You can, and you will." She stood, extending her hand but stopping before touching him. "But we will do it differently. You go up, thank them for their patience, and shorten the presentation. Only the key points. 5 minutes, then it is over. Andrew looked at her as though she had suggested the impossible. 5 minutes? 5 minutes, you can do anything for 5 minutes. He hesitated. Kelsey could see the battle waging inside him. Fear against pride, exhaustion against determination. Then he stood. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. They tested the microphone again. It worked. Andrew drew a deep breath, adjusted his suit, and walked back onto the stage. Kelsey stayed backstage, watching, her heart lodged in her throat. He returned to the center of the stage. The audience applauded politely, but there was curiosity in their expressions, questions hanging unspoken in the air. Andrew took the microphone, tested it quickly, and then spoke. "My apologies for the interruption. Let us continue." And he continued, not with the 40 remaining minutes he had planned, but with 5 minutes. 5 minutes of direct conclusions, final data, a clear and powerful message. When he finished, the audience applauded, not with the enthusiasm of the beginning, but with respect. Andrew thanked them, nodded briefly, and stepped off the stage. The moment he crossed the curtain, Kelsey was there. He stopped in front of her, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, looking at each other, adrenaline still rushing through them both. "You did it," Kelsey said softly. "I almost fell apart." "But you did not." Andrew stepped closer. Not much, just enough to close the distance from a meter to perhaps half that. Kelsey felt her heart begin to race. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough, "for pulling me out, for bringing me back. Always." The word escaped before Kelsey could think, and something changed in his face when he heard it. His eyes softened, his jaw relaxed, and then he did something she never expected. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze dropping to her lips. The world disappeared. There was no conference, no 600 people on the other side of the curtain, no trauma or fear or rules, only the two of them in that tiny space, their breaths mixing in the quiet air. Kelsey felt her entire body tremble, felt something ignite inside her, something that was desire and fear and need all at once. She did not move. She could not. She felt as though any movement might shatter the moment, might make him recoil. Andrew took another step. Now he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, close enough to see every detail of his face, the line of his jaw, the slight tremor in his eyes, the way his lips parted as though he were trying to remember how to breathe. He was going to kiss her. Kelsey was certain. She saw it in the way he leaned in a little more, in the way he closed his eyes for a split second, in the way his entire body seemed magnetized toward hers. And then he stopped. His eyes snapped open, wide and frightened. He stepped back as though burned, taking 2 quick steps away, his hands lifting as if to defend himself from something invisible. I am sorry, I cannot." His voice came out fractured, desperate. "I cannot do this." Kelsey stood frozen, her heart splintering inside her chest, unable to form a single word. She saw the exact moment his defenses snapped back into place. She saw the way his shoulders stiffened, the way his expression closed off, the way he became, in an instant, the untouchable man everyone knew. "Andrew, I need to go." And before she could say anything, he turned and walked away, disappearing down the hotel corridors, leaving Kelsey alone backstage with the bitter taste of the almost certainty that something meaningful had nearly happened. She remained there for a long time, the sound of her own breathing, far too loud in her ears. It felt as though she had just touched the sun and been burned, as though she had come so close to something real, something deep, only to watch it slip through her fingers at the last second. And the worst part? She was not angry with him. Her heart was broken, because now she knew he felt something too. She knew that almost kiss had not been her imagination. She knew there was something between them, something real and powerful and terrifying. And she knew he was just as afraid of it as she was, perhaps even more. Kelsey did not go back to the office on Wednesday. She called early before 7 and told Maya she had a migraine. It was not a lie. Her head had been throbbing since she woke up, the result of an entire night without sleep, replaying every second of that almost kiss backstage at the conference. The way Andrew had leaned in, the way his eyes had trembled, the way he had pulled back, as if she were something too dangerous to touch. She spent the day inside the tiny apartment she shared with Sophia, trying to distract herself with household chores. She did laundry, cleaned the kitchen, organized the bookshelf for the third time, but nothing worked. Her mind kept circling back to him, to the raw pain she had seen on his face when he stepped away, to the way he had said, "I cannot," with a voice so broken it sounded torn from the deepest part of him. Sophia noticed, of course. Her younger sister had an irritating ability to read Kelsey like an open book. During dinner, a simple pasta dish Kelsey prepared more out of obligation than hunger. Sophia finally asked, "Do you want to talk about it?" Kelsey pushed the fork around her plate without eating. "About what?" "About whatever has you like this." "It is nothing." "Kelsey." Sophia set her fork down and folded her arms. "You cleaned the whole apartment 3 times. You only do that when you are trying to run from your own mind." Kelsey sighed and put her fork down as well. "It is work, that is all. Work or a boss." The silence that followed was answer enough. Sophia raised an eyebrow but did not press. She simply reached across the table and squeezed Kelsey's hand briefly. "Whatever it is, you will figure it out. You always do." Kelsey wanted to believe that, but she could not, because this time it was not just about fixing a problem. It was about something she was not sure she wanted to fix, or fall even deeper into. Night fell early, bringing with it a storm that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Around 8, the rain began to pour heavily, pounding against the windows with an almost deafening rhythm. Thunder split the sky in uneven intervals, making the lights flicker. Sophia had gone out to study at the college library, leaving Kelsey alone in the quiet apartment. She was in the living room, wrapped in a blanket on the sofa, trying to focus on a book she was not truly reading. When the doorbell rang, Kelsey frowned. 9 at night. Who would that be? Sophia had a key, and they were not expecting anyone. The bell rang again, more insistent this time. Kelsey stood up, letting the blanket fall aside, and walked to the door. She looked through the peephole, and her heart stopped. Andrew. He was standing there on the other side of the door, completely drenched. His dark suit clung to his body from the rain, his hair dripping water, his face pale and tense. He was not wearing gloves. His hands were bare, trembling slightly at his sides. Kelsey opened the door so fast she nearly tore it off the hinges. "Andrew?" He looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her forget how to breathe. It was not anger. It was not pride. It was pure desperation, as if he had run all the way there because he had no other place left to go. "I did not know where else to go," he said, his voice low, almost drowned out by the rain. I needed." He did not finish. His voice broke, and Kelsey saw the moment his body began to shake. Not from cold, from something far worse. "Come in." She stepped aside, opening the way. "Please come in." Andrew hesitated. He looked inside the apartment, then back at her, as if measuring the risks. Then, slowly, he took one step forward, and another, until he was inside, dripping water onto the worn wooden floor. Kelsey closed the door, shutting out the rest of the world. She turned toward him, and only then saw how bad he truly was. His breathing was irregular, his hands trembled violently now, and his eyes were lost, as if he no longer knew where he was or what he was doing. "You are having a panic episode," Kelsey said, keeping her voice calm even though her heart was racing. "But it is going to pass, I promise it will pass. I should not be here." The words tumbled out, frantic and uneven. "I should not have come. I could not. After the conference, I could not. It is all right. You are safe here. I am not." He shook his head, his wet hair sending droplets of water in every direction. "I am not safe anywhere. I cannot. Every time I close my eyes, I feel." He could not continue. His breathing was speeding up again, growing shorter, faster. Kelsey saw the panic taking over, saw the exact moment he began drowning on dry air. "Andrew, look at me." He tried, but his eyes would not focus. "Look at me." Kelsey took a step closer, still, careful not to touch him. "You are not there, you are not in that day, you are here with me now." His eyes finally found hers, and Kelsey saw the fight happening inside him. She saw him trying to anchor himself to her voice, trying to use it as a reference point in the chaos. "Breathe with me," she said, beginning to inhale slowly. "Inhale." He tried, failed, tried again. His breath came in ragged bursts, but it was better than before. That is it. Keep going. Inhale. Exhale. Minute by minute, his breathing began to steady. Slowly, the tremor in his hands diminished. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly, but he still looked as though he were standing on the edge of collapsing, holding himself together by a thread. Sit, Kelsey said, gesturing toward the sofa. You need to sit before you fall. Andrew nodded mechanically and walked to the sofa, sinking into it in a way that looked more like surrender than a conscious choice. He stayed there, bent forward, elbows on his knees, bare hands clasped together, head lowered. Kelsey went to the kitchen, grabbed a clean towel, and returned. She stopped in front of him, holding the towel out. For you to dry off. He took it without looking, ran it quickly over his face and hair, then let it fall beside him. The silence that settled between them was heavy, filled with all the things neither could say. Why did you run? Kelsey finally asked, her voice coming out softer than she intended. After the conference. Why did you run? Andrew closed his eyes as if the question caused physical pain. Because I was about to do something I cannot do. Kiss me. It was not a question, but he answered anyway. Yes. Why can't you? Because... He opened his eyes but did not look at her. He kept his gaze fixed on the floor. Because everything I touch, I ruin. Every person who gets close, I hurt. And you deserve more than that. Kelsey felt something crack inside her. Do you really believe that? That you ruin people? I do not believe, I know. His voice was heavy now, weighted with a painful conviction. My father died because he was trying to save someone. The last thing he did was hold my hand, and I spent 10 years convinced that if I touch someone I care about, something bad will happen. That is the trauma talking. It is not real. It feels real. He finally looked at her, and the raw pain in his eyes was almost unbearable to see. Every time someone touches me, I feel his hand, cold, lifeless, and I am certain that if I let someone in, if I allow someone to touch me for real, I will lose that person too. Kelsey knelt in front of him, not close enough to invade his space, but close enough so he would know she was there. You are not going to lose me. You do not know that. I do. She held his gaze with an intensity that allowed no room for doubt. Because I choose to stay, no matter how hard it is, no matter how much you try to push me away, I choose to stay. Andrew shook his head as if he wanted to argue but no longer had the energy. He looked exhausted, not physically. It was a weariness that came from somewhere much deeper, from carrying an impossible weight for too long. I do not know how to do this, he whispered. Let someone in. Trust that it will not end in tragedy. You do not need to know. You only need to try. And if I cannot, then we try again and again, until you can. He looked at her for a long moment, and Kelsey saw something shift there, something that looked close to hope, but also fear. So much fear. And then he did something Kelsey never expected. He lifted his hand, slowly, trembling, and reached toward her. Kelsey held her breath, her heart racing. She did not move. She simply stayed there, kneeling in front of him, waiting, giving him room, letting the choice be his. Andrew's hand hovered in the air for a second that felt like an eternity. Then, with painful hesitation, his fingers touched her arm. It was the lightest touch Kelsey had ever felt. Barely a touch at all. Just the tips of his fingers brushing the skin of her forearm, so softly it could have been imagined. But it was real, and the effect was devastating. Andrew inhaled sharply, as if struck by an electric shock. His entire body tensed. His eyes widened, but he did not pull back. He did not withdraw his hand. He simply remained there, his fingers, still resting on her skin, trembling violently but refusing to move away. Kelsey did not dare move. She did not dare breathe. She was afraid anything might shatter the moment, might make him run again. I am touching you, Andrew whispered, his voice hoarse and disbelieving. I am touching you. You are. Kelsey kept her voice soft and steady. And I am all right. Nothing bad is happening. He looked at his own hand, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. His fingers still trembled against her skin, but little by little, very slowly, the shaking began to ease. You are warm, he said almost to himself. I do not remember. It has been so long since You are warm. Kelsey felt her chest tighten. 10 years. 10 years without feeling the warmth of another person. 10 years living in a cold, isolated world, and now he was here, touching her, rediscovering the world through her. "May I?" Andrew asked, his voice hesitant. He did not specify what he was asking for, but Kelsey understood. He wanted more. He wanted to feel more. "You may." Slowly, so slowly that every millimeter felt like an eternity, he moved his hand from her forearm to her wrist. His fingers circled her wrist with a tenderness that bordered on reverence, as if she were made of glass and could break at any moment. "I can feel your pulse," he said, his voice filled with something like wonder. "Your heart is beating fast." "It is," Kelsey admitted, because denying it was possible. Her heart was racing, pounding so hard she was certain he could feel it through her skin. Andrew looked into her eyes, and there was something different there now. It was not just fear anymore. It was something more complex, something that felt like desire woven with terror, with a longing so deep it hurt to witness. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up on me." Kelsey felt her eyes sting, but she did not allow the emotion to spill over. "I will never give up." They stayed there for a span of time impossible to measure, he holding her wrist, she kneeling in front of him, the rain still falling outside, creating a curtain of sound that shut out the world. It was intimate in a way that went far beyond the physical. It was the rawest, most honest moment Kelsey had ever experienced. When Andrew finally released her wrist, it was slow, as if every inch of distance hurt. He looked at his own hand, now resting in his lap again, and something crossed his face, something that looked like relief mixed with exhaustion. "I should go," he said, but he did not move. "You can stay." Kelsey stood, taking a step back to give him room, at least until the rain stops. He hesitated, clearly torn between the desire to stay and the instinct to flee. But then he nodded, so subtly it was almost imperceptible. Kelsey went to the kitchen, prepared 2 teas, and returned. She set a cup on the coffee table in front of him, then sat in the armchair beside him, maintaining respectful distance. They drank the tea in silence. Words were unnecessary. Something fundamental had shifted between them, and they both knew it. A line had been crossed, not in a dramatic or explosive way, but in something subtle and profound. When his cup was empty, Andrew stood. "Thank you for everything, always." He walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. "Kelsey." "Yes? I do not know what this means, what happened here, but I do not regret it." Kelsey gave a faint smile. "Neither do I." He nodded once, then opened the door and stepped out into the rain, which was now falling more gently. Kelsey stayed by the doorway, watching as he walked toward the car parked on the street. Before getting in, he looked back one last time, and then he was gone. Kelsey closed the door and leaned against it, her heart still beating fast. She looked down at her own wrist, at the place where his fingers had rested, and she could still feel the ghost of his touch. He had touched her, by his own choice. For the first time in 10 years, Andrew McCall had broken his own rule, and nothing bad had happened. Maybe, just maybe, he would finally begin to believe that. The next morning arrived with a timid sun trying to break through the gray clouds still lingering over Seattle. Kelsey woke up early, her body tired but her mind strangely alert, replaying every second of the night before, the way Andrew had appeared at her door, soaked and unraveling, the way he had lifted his hand, trembling, and touched her wrist, the way his eyes widened when he realized nothing bad had happened. She brushed her fingers over her own wrist, still feeling the ghost of that light, almost reverent touch. Something fundamental had shifted. She knew it. He knew it. And now all that remained was discovering what would come next. On Thursday morning, Kelsey arrived at the office at exactly 8. The 23rd floor was relatively quiet, with only a few assistants organizing documents and preparing coffee. Andrew's office was closed, the blinds lowered. Maya appeared with a coffee in hand and a curious expression. "He arrived at 6:30 today," she said, lowering her voice, "and he asked me to schedule an appointment with a therapist, Courtney Morrison, trauma and OCD specialist." Kelsey felt something warm expand inside her chest. "He asked for that?" "He did, said it was urgent." Maya tilted her head, studying Kelsey's face. "What happened? He's different. I cannot explain it, but there is something different about him. He's trying," Kelsey said simply. "He's trying to change." Maya did not push further, but her expression made it clear she knew there was more to the story. She only squeezed Kelsey's shoulder briefly before walking off and leaving her alone with her thoughts. The morning passed in an odd rhythm. Kelsey worked mechanically, answering emails, organizing schedules, but her mind was elsewhere. It was in the closed office at the end of the hallway, where Andrew was likely preparing to take the hardest step someone with trauma could take, asking for help. It was almost noon when his door finally opened. Andrew stepped out and Kelsey felt her chest tighten at the sight of him. He wore a dark gray suit today, impeccable as always, but something in his posture had changed. It was not the familiar rigidity. It was something softer, as though a weight had been partially lifted from his shoulders. He walked down the hallway, passed by Kelsey's desk and stopped. He turned toward her, and for a second, neither of them spoke. They simply looked at each other, and in that look there was recognition, gratitude, and something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. "Thank you," he said quietly, "just for her, for last night. You do not need to thank me. I do." He hesitated as if he wanted to say more, but then only nodded and continued toward the elevator, disappearing inside. Kelsey sat there, her heart beating faster than it should, and she knew something had begun. Something slow, painful, but absolutely necessary. Andrew's first therapy session happened Friday afternoon. Kelsey did not know the details, but she saw it on his face when he returned around 6. She saw the exhaustion. She saw the heaviness in his shoulders. She saw how he slipped into his office and closed the door without looking at anyone. Therapy was not magic. It did not fix anything instantly. She knew that, and judging by the look on his face, he was discovering it the hard way. The following Monday, Maya informed Kelsey that Andrew had canceled all morning meetings. He was having his second session with Courtney. On Tuesday, the 3rd. On Thursday, the 4th. The pattern took shape quickly. 3 times a week, without fail, Andrew disappeared for 2 hours to confront the demons he had carried for a decade, and Kelsey saw the effects. She saw how he was quieter on therapy days, how he avoided eye contact with everyone, including her, how his hands trembled faintly when he thought no one was watching. But she also saw the determination. She saw how he always returned, always continued, never quit. A month passed like that. June turned into July, and Seattle entered that rare time of year when the sun truly appeared, transforming the city into something almost unrecognizable. The streets filled with people enjoying the warmth, the parks burst with picnics, and there was a lightness in the air that contrasted sharply with the weight Andrew still carried. It was on a Wednesday afternoon in early July that he appeared at Kelsey's workstation. She was reviewing contracts when she sensed him standing there. She looked up and found him a meter away, hands in his pockets, expression hesitant. "Do you have plans for tonight?" The question came so unexpectedly that Kelsey needed a second to process it. "No, why?" Andrew wet his lips nervously. My therapist suggested I practice proximity with someone I trust, and I thought, if you would not mind." He did not finish, but he did not have to. Kelsey understood immediately. He was asking for help. He was asking her to be part of his healing, and that meant more than any declaration could. "Of course," she said, keeping her voice steady, even as her heart, "What do you need?" "I do not know." He let out a short, humorless laugh. Courtney said something about normal domestic situations, something that does not carry pressure or expectation, just being near someone without having to defend myself the entire time. Kelsey thought for a moment. "You could come to my apartment for dinner, nothing elaborate, just home-cooked food and conversation." He looked at her for a long moment, and she could see the internal battle, the fear, colliding with the desire to try. Then finally he nodded. "What time?" 7? 7, he repeated, as if committing it to memory. Then he stepped away and returned to his office, leaving Kelsey alone with the realization of what had just happened. Andrew McCall was coming to her home for dinner. Voluntarily, yes, as part of therapy, but still. It was a massive step, perhaps the biggest he had ever taken. Kelsey left the office at 5, stopped at the market to buy ingredients, and arrived home with enough time to prepare something simple yet comforting. She decided on mushroom risotto, a green salad, and Italian bread she had bought fresh from the bakery near the apartment. Nothing elaborate, but made with care. Sophia was in the living room when Kelsey came in carrying the bags. "You're cooking?" the younger sister asked, eyebrows raised. "You never cook during the week." "I have company." "What kind of company?" Kelsey hesitated, then chose honesty. "My boss." Sophia almost dropped the glass of water she was holding. "Your boss? The man you've been sighing about for the past month?" "I have not been sighing." "Of course you have. And now he's coming here for dinner?" Sophia stood up, folding her arms. "Is this a date?" "It is not a date. It is complicated." "Complicated how?" Kelsey set the grocery bags on the kitchen counter and began removing the ingredients. "He is going through some things, and his therapist suggested he practice being close to people in safe environments, so he asked me for help." Sophia stayed silent for a moment, processing. Then she nodded slowly. "You like him?" It was not a question, but Kelsey answered anyway. "Yes." "He likes you?" "I think so, but it is complicated." "You already said that." Sophia walked to the kitchen and began helping her put the groceries away. "Look, I do not know what is going on, but you deserve to be happy, Kels. Do not forget that, all right?" Kelsey hugged her sister briefly. "Thank you." "You are welcome, and I will disappear to the library as soon as he gets here. You two need privacy." "You do not have to." "Yes, I do. Now tell me, what are you going to wear?" Kelsey looked down at her own clothes. The simple work blouse and jeans. "This? Absolutely not." Sophia grabbed her by the arm and pulled her toward the bedroom. "Let us find something that says, 'I am here to support you, but I am also undeniably beautiful.'" Kelsey laughed, and it was the first time all day she felt the tension ease even a little. At exactly 7, the doorbell rang. Kelsey had changed clothes, now wearing a soft light blue blouse and dark jeans. Nothing formal but a step above casual. Sophia had already left, leaving the apartment quiet. Kelsey took a deep breath and opened the door. Andrew stood there, wearing a gray dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows and dark trousers. No tie, no jacket, no gloves. His hands were bare, holding a bottle of red wine as if it were an anchor. "Hi," he said, and there was something vulnerable in his voice that made Kelsey's heart tighten. "Hi, come in." He stepped inside, looking around the small but cozy apartment. Kelsey saw him taking in the details. The bookshelves filled with novels, the plants on the windowsill, the framed photos of her and Sophia over the years. It was so different from the world of steel and glass where they spent their days. It was human, real. "Your apartment is warm," Andrew said, and it sounded like a genuine surprise, as if he had not expected to feel comfort in a physical space. "Thank you." Kelsey took the bottle of wine from his hands. "Let me open this so it can breathe. Dinner is almost ready." She moved to the kitchen and Andrew followed, stopping in the doorway to watch her stir the risotto on the stove. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but it was charged with something. Expectation, perhaps, or simply the awareness that they were stepping into new territory. "Can I help?" Andrew asked. "You can grab the plates," Kelsey said, nodding toward the cupboard. "Right there." He opened it, took out 2 plates, and set them on the small table Kelsey had prepared earlier. There was something domestic and strangely intimate in that simple gesture, as if they were pretending at normalcy, testing what life could look like if it were always this way. When dinner was ready, they sat across from each other. Kelsey served the risotto, the salad, the bread. Andrew waited until she began eating before picking up his fork, and when he finally tasted the food, something softened in his expression. "It is incredible. It is nothing special. It is, actually." He looked at her, and there was a sincerity there that disarmed any defense. "It has been a long time since someone cooked for me. I mean, besides restaurants or hired chefs. This is different. Different good or different bad? Different good." He took a sip of wine, then added, "Very good." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Andrew spoke. "Courtney says I associate closeness with loss, that my brain learned to connect being near someone with the pain of losing them." He twirled the fork in his plate, thoughtful. "She says that to reprogram that, I need to create new memories. Memories where closeness does not end in tragedy. And that is why you are here. That is why I am here." He lifted his eyes, meeting hers. "But also because I wanted to be. I want to be near you, Kelsey, even when I am afraid. Maybe especially because I am afraid." Kelsey's heart beat harder. "I want that too." Something shifted in the air between them, denser, heavier. Not in a bad way, just undeniable. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Kelsey put on soft music, something instrumental that filled the silence without demanding their attention. They sat on the sofa, Kelsey on one end and Andrew on the other, a safe space between them. "Tell me about your sister," Andrew said suddenly. Kelsey smiled. "Sophia? She is amazing. Smarter than I was at her age. More focused, too. She wants to be a pediatric nurse. You two are close. Very. After our mother died, it was just the two of us. It was hard, but we figured it out. You raised her. It was not a question. It was acknowledgement. I tried. I do not know if I did a good job, but she turned into an incredible person, so I guess something worked." Andrew was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I have a brother, Daniel. You met him that day at the office. The man who was arguing with you." "Yes. He is 4 years younger. After my father died, I kind of distanced myself from him. Not on purpose, but I did not know how to be close without feeling like I was bringing pain with me. You two talk now?" "We are trying. Courtney suggested I rebuild some bridges, so I called him last week. We are having lunch together on Saturday." He gave a faint, humorless laugh. "It is going to be awkward, but necessary." Kelsey felt warmth spread through her chest. He was trying, truly trying, not only with her, but with everything in his life. They talked for hours about family, childhood, dreams they had once had and dreams they lost. Andrew spoke about his father, about what he had been like before the accident. A man who believed in doing what was right, even when it came at a high cost. Kelsey spoke about her mother, about how she always said love was a choice, not a feeling. And slowly, as they talked, the physical distance between them on the sofa began to shrink. Not consciously, it just happened. Until, at some point in the night, they were sitting closer, their bodies angled toward each other, their knees almost touching. It was Andrew who crossed the final barrier. "May I?" He extended his hand slowly, hesitantly toward hers. Kelsey looked at his hand, then at his eyes, and nodded. "You may." He placed his hand over hers, resting on the sofa between them. The touch was deliberate this time, intentional, and the effect was immediate. Andrew inhaled sharply, his whole body tensing, but he did not pull back. He just stayed there, his hand covering hers, trembling slightly but steady. "You are warm," he said, just as he had that night in the rain. "Always so warm." Kelsey turned her, palm upward, intertwining her fingers with his. "It is all right, I am here, nothing bad is going to happen." "I know," but his voice betrayed the doubt still living inside him. "My mind knows. I just need the rest of me to believe it." They stayed like that for a time that felt both infinite and far too short, hands entwined, eyes locked, breaths aligned. There was something almost sacred in the moment, as if they were building something fragile yet essential. Then Andrew did, something that stole the breath from her lungs. He lifted his free hand, slowly, so slowly that every millimeter felt like an eternity, and brought it toward her face. "May I?" he asked again. Kelsey could barely speak. "Yes." His hand touched her cheek. First just the fingertips, grazing her skin with a reverence so tender it nearly broke her. Then his whole palm, warm and slightly rough, cupping the left side of her face. Andrew closed his eyes, as if committing the sensation to memory. "You are real," he whispered. "Sometimes I forget that people are real, that they exist outside my head, outside the fear. But you are so real." Kelsey placed her own hand over his, holding it against her face. "I am real, and I am not going anywhere." He opened his eyes, and what she saw there made her forget how to breathe. It was no longer fear. It was no longer trauma. It was desire. Pure, raw, undeniable desire. Kelsey. Her name left him like a prayer, like a confession, like a question he did not know how to ask. "I know," she answered, because she did. She knew exactly what he felt because she felt it too. That magnetic pull, that need to be close, that desire that reached far deeper than the physical. Andrew brushed his thumb along her cheek, a simple movement but loaded with intention, and Kelsey felt her entire body tremble. He noticed. She saw it in his eyes, and something changed in his expression, more intense now, more focused. "I want to kiss you," he confessed, his voice low and almost fragile. "I want to so much it hurts, but you are afraid." I am afraid of ruining it, of not knowing how, of being too much or not enough. Kelsey gave a small smile. There is no right or wrong way. There is only what we feel. And what do you feel? That I want it too. Something broke inside him at those words. Kelsey saw the exact moment when the last resistance crumbled. He leaned closer, his hand still on her face, his thumb now brushing her lower lip with torturous slowness. But then he stopped, so close she could feel his breath mingling with hers, so close that one tiny movement would close the distance. But he did not close it. Not yet, he whispered, and there was pain in his voice that tore at her. I want to. God, I want to. But not yet. I need to be certain I am doing this for the right reasons, that it is not just desperation or gratitude or, I understand. And she did. Because forcing anything before its time would shatter it before it even began. Andrew pulled back slowly, removing his hand from her face, but not letting go of her other hand. They remained there, fingers still intertwined, looking at each other in the soft light of the small living room. Thank you, he said at last, for understanding, for being patient, for everything. You do not need to thank me. I do. He squeezed her hand once. You have no idea what this means to me. What you mean? Warmth spread through Kelsey's chest. You mean something to me, too. They stayed a while longer, speaking softly, their hands still entwined. When the clock struck midnight, Andrew finally stood to leave. At the door, he hesitated. May this become something regular? Dinner here, talking, practicing, this. It can, whenever you want. He smiled then, a true, genuine smile that transformed his face completely. See you soon, Kelsey. See you soon, Andrew. She watched him walk down the stairs, get into his car, and only closed the door when the headlights disappeared at the end of the street. When Sophia returned from the library half an hour later, she found Kelsey still in the living room, seated on the sofa, looking at her own hand as if it were something precious. So? Sophia asked. How was it? Kelsey smiled, a small smile but full of meaning. It was perfect, and for the first time in a long time she believed things really could turn out well. In the weeks that followed, the dinners became routine. Every Wednesday and Friday, Andrew appeared at exactly 7, always with a bottle of wine or a dessert from the expensive bakery downtown. Kelsey cooked, they ate, they talked, and slowly, very slowly, the physical distance between them shrank even more. In the 3rd week, he held her hand through the entire meal. In the 4th, he rested his arm across the back of the sofa behind her while they watched a movie. In the 5th, he laid his head on her shoulder for a few minutes, simply absorbing the closeness. Each touch was a victory. Each moment without panic was proof that he was healing, and Kelsey was there for every second of it, witnessing the most beautiful transformation she had ever seen. And then, on a Friday evening at the end of July, the moment came that would change everything. They were in the kitchen, Kelsey washing the dishes, Andrew drying them beside her. It was domestic, simple, yet deeply intimate. They talked about their day, about small, insignificant things when Andrew suddenly stopped. Kelsey turned her head to look at him. What is it? He set the dish towel aside and turned fully toward her. There was something different in his eyes, something resolute. Close your eyes. Kelsey blinked. What? Trust me. Close your eyes. She obeyed, her heart pounding. She felt him take a step closer, felt the warmth of his body just inches from hers, felt his breath slightly uneven brushing against her face, and then she felt his hand. Andrew placed his hand on her face, but this time there was no trembling, no hesitation. It was steady, sure, deliberate. His thumb brushed her cheek with a tenderness that sent a shiver through her entire body. Open your eyes, he whispered. She did, and what she saw stole her breath. Andrew was there, so close, looking at her with an intensity that burned, and there was no fear in his eyes. For the first time, there was no fear at all. I am not trembling, he said, almost in awe. I am touching you, and I am not trembling. Kelsey placed her own hand over his. You are not. I spent 10 years believing my touch ruined things. But with you, he slid his hand from her cheek to her neck, his fingers resting lightly over the rapid pulse there. With you, all I want is to build. And then finally, he closed the distance. It was not a kiss. Not yet. but it was more intimate than any kiss could ever be. Andrew rested his forehead against hers, closed his eyes, and simply breathed. He breathed with her, alongside her, synchronized in a way that went far beyond the physical. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up, for waiting, for teaching me that I am not a curse." Kelsey felt something tighten in her chest, something so big it almost hurt. "You were never a curse, Andrew. You were always human. You only needed to remember that." They stayed like that, foreheads touching, breaths mingling, hands intertwined. And in that moment, in the quiet of that small kitchen lit only by the soft glow above the sink, something was completed. Andrew had touched someone without fear. He had held, caressed, felt, and nothing bad had happened. He was finally beginning to heal, and Kelsey knew that from that moment on there was no turning back. Whatever was growing between them was real. It was deep, and it was inevitable. August arrived, carrying an unusual heat for Seattle, the kind of heat that made the asphalt ripple under the sun and turned the air into something dense, almost solid. Kelsey was in the office on a Friday night, well past 6, when most people had already gone home. She had stayed to finish an urgent report Andrew needed to review before a Monday meeting. The 23rd floor was silent, only the low hum of the air conditioner breaking the stillness. Kelsey saved the document, shut down the computer, and was reaching for her bag when she heard footsteps behind her. "You're still here." She turned and found Andrew standing a few feet away. He had taken off his jacket, his tie was loosened, and the sleeves of his white shirt were rolled to his elbows. There was something different about him tonight, something in the way he looked at her, as though he were in the process of making a decision. "I finished the report," Kelsey said. "It's in your inbox." "Thank you." He did not move. He simply kept looking at her with that intensity that made her skin tingle. "Do you have plans now?" "No." "Why?" Andrew hesitated, running a hand through his hair in a gesture Kelsey had learned to recognize as nerves. "I wanted to show you something, if you don't mind." "Show me what?" "Come with me." He turned and walked toward the elevator. Kelsey grabbed her bag and followed, curiosity rising. They stepped into the cab together, and Andrew pressed a button she had never seen anyone use. "The top floor?" "The 30th. "I didn't know there was a 30th floor," Kelsey said as the elevator began to climb. "It isn't exactly a floor, more of an observation platform. It was built when the tower was constructed, but almost no one knows it exists." He glanced at her. "I come here sometimes, when I need to think." The doors opened, revealing a short hallway that ended in a glass door. Andrew pushed it open, and Kelsey felt the warm night air hit her face. They stepped out onto a glass walkway that encircled the entire top of the building, offering a 360-degree view of Seattle. It was breathtaking. The city stretched below them like a living map, lights flickering in every direction. The Space Needle glowed in the distance. The sound of traffic reached them muted, softened, and the sky, brushed with orange and pink from a sunset that had not fully disappeared, created a scene that felt almost unreal. "My God," Kelsey whispered, walking to the edge of the walkway. The glass beneath her feet was transparent, allowing her to see the street far below, so distant that the cars looked like toys. "It's impressive, isn't it?" Andrew stepped closer, standing beside her. Not too close, just closer than he would have dared a few weeks ago. "It's more than impressive, it's..." She searched for the right word. "It's freedom." He turned his head toward her. "Freedom. Being up here, seeing everything from far away. It's like the problems down there shrink." She gave a small smile. "I understand why you come here." Andrew was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the city below. Then he spoke softly. "I come here when I feel trapped, when the world down there feels like it's closing in on me. It's the only place where I can actually breathe." Kelsey turned fully to look at him. "And today? Why did you bring me here today?" He met her eyes at last, and there was something different in his gaze. Something like resolve tangled with fear and something else she could not name. "Because I wanted to share this with you. My refuge. My place." He stepped closer. "Because you've become important. More than I planned. More than I thought possible." Kelsey's heart tightened. "Andrew, let me finish." He drew a steady breath. "These last few weeks, since I started therapy, since that night I showed up at your door soaked and falling apart, something changed. Not just in me, between us, and I can't pretend I'm not feeling it anymore. Feeling what? You. The word came out simple, direct, but weighted with everything he could not say. I feel you, Kelsey. All the time. Even when you're not near. Even when I'm alone. You're here. He laid his hand on his chest over his heart. And I don't know what to do with that. Kelsey felt something tighten in her throat. You don't have to do anything. You just have to accept it. I spent 10 years running from anything that looked like closeness. 10 years convincing myself solitude was safer than connection. And then you showed up. He gave a short, humorless laugh. You, with your automatic reflex of fixing crooked ties. You, who refused to leave when I told you to. You who breathed with me in the dark and taught me I wasn't as broken as I thought. You were never broken. I was. I still am. But you. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them to almost nothing. You made me believe I might fix myself, that I might even deserve it. You deserve it, Kelsey said firmly. You always did. A gust of wind swept between them, blowing Kelsey's hair across her face. Andrew reached out without thinking and brushed a strand aside, his fingers lingering against her cheek longer than necessary. And for the first time, there was no tremor, no hesitation. I want to kiss you, he confessed, his voice rough. I want to kiss you so much it's killing me, but I need you to understand. If I do this, there's no going back. I don't know how to do things halfway, so if I kiss you now, here, I need to know you want this as much as I do. Kelsey placed her hand over his, still resting on her cheek. I do. More than you think. Something broke inside him when he heard that. Kelsey saw it happen. She saw the last barrier fall, saw fear finally lose to desire, saw him decide that she was worth the risk. I spent 10 years believing my touch ruined things, Andrew said, his other hand rising to cup the other side of her face, holding her with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the intensity in his eyes. You proved to me that it heals. And then he kissed her. It was not gentle. It was not hesitant. It was desperate, hungry, as if he had been dying of thirst and she were water. His mouth claimed hers with an urgency that stole every breath from her lungs. One hand slid to the back of her neck, fingers threading into her hair, pulling her closer. The other hand moved to her waist, drawing her against him, erasing every inch of space that had ever existed between their bodies. Kelsey felt her knees weaken. She held onto his shoulders to steady herself, but then her hands slid up, one to his neck, the other into his hair, pulling him even closer if such a thing was possible. The kiss deepened, becoming more intense, more consuming. It was as though 10 years of self-imposed isolation had erupted all at once, every repressed need, every denied desire, everything pouring out in that single moment. Andrew rotated their bodies, pressing her back gently against the railing of the walkway. Careful, always careful. Even lost in the kiss, even desperate, he remained acutely aware of her, protective of her. His lips left her mouth only to trail down her jaw, her throat, drawing a shiver from Kelsey she could not control. God, he murmured against her skin, his voice rough and fractured. How? Did I live without this? How did I live without you? Kelsey pulled his face back to hers, kissing him again, answering without words. Because she did not know either. She did not know how she had lived before this, before him, before understanding what it felt like to be kissed by someone who saw her, who understood her, who chose her despite every fear. The kiss gradually softened, becoming deeper in another way, not less intense, simply more intimate. Andrew's hands rose to her face, again, holding her as though she were the most precious thing in the world. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers, his eyes still closed, his breath uneven. I love you, he said suddenly, the words slipping out like a confession. I did not plan it, I did not want it, but I cannot pretend anymore. I love you, Kelsey. The world stopped. Kelsey opened her eyes, looking at his face so close to hers. Andrew, you do not need to say it back. I only needed you to, know that I love you too, she cut in, and she watched his eyes fly open, startled. I love you so much it hurts, so much I can barely breathe when you are near, so much that he kissed her again, silencing the words, because nothing else was necessary. Words were unnecessary when everything was already being spoken through touch, through the way their bodies fit together perfectly, through the way their hearts beat in the same fevered rhythm. They remained there for a time, impossible to measure, kissing, touching, simply feeling. The city kept spinning beneath them, but up there, at the top of the world, nothing existed except the two of them. It was the sound of a notification on Andrew's phone that finally pulled them back to reality. He ignored it at first, but then it chimed again, and again. He exhaled, pulling back reluctantly, and reached into his pocket for the phone. His expression changed instantly. "What is it?" Kelsey asked, still trying to catch her breath. Andrew turned the screen toward her. It was a message from Maya, and the content made Kelsey's breath catch. "You need to see this. Now." Attached to the text was a link. Andrew tapped it and the video began to play. It was them, on the walkway, kissing the security camera. Kelsey had completely forgotten there were cameras all over the building, and this one had captured everything. Every second, every touch, every intimate moment, and the video had already been posted on a social platform by someone, some employee with access to the security system, and it was spreading fast. "Damn," Andrew muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Damn." Kelsey felt panic begin to rise. "How long ago was it posted?" He checked. 20 minutes. "How many views already?" Andrew looked and his face went pale. 50,000 and climbing. 50,000 in 20 minutes. That meant it was going viral. It meant that a video of the CEO of McCall Industries kissing his assistant on the top of the building was being watched by thousands of people. Journalists, investors, competitors, all of Seattle. "What do we do?" Kelsey asked, her voice louder than she intended. Andrew slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked at her, and to Kelsey's surprise, he was smiling. Not much, just a small curve of his lips, but it was there. "Nothing, nothing. Andrew, this could destroy your career. It could. I do not care." He stepped closer again, taking her face in his hands. "Did you hear what I said? I do not care. Let them see. Let them talk. Let them judge. I spent 10 years hiding, protecting myself, living in fear that someone would discover how broken I thought I was. But do you know what I realized? Hiding did not protect me from anything. It only left me alone. But there is no but." He kissed her forehead. Gentle, reassuring. "I love you, and I will not hide that. I will not pretend this did not happen. If the entire world wants to watch the moment I finally stopped being a coward, then let them." Kelsey felt something melt inside her. How was she this lucky? How had she found this man? This extraordinary man who had endured so much and still chose to be brave? "I love you," she said again, unable to stop herself. "I love you too." He pulled her into his arms and Kelsey fit perfectly against his chest, hearing his heart pounding, strong, fast, alive. They stayed there until the sky turned completely dark, until the stars began to appear above them. And when they finally stepped down from the walkway and returned to the real world, the video had already surpassed 1 million views. Andrew's phone would not stop ringing. Calls from board members, emails from journalists requesting comments, messages from friends and acquaintances, but he ignored them all, because for the first time in 10 years, Andrew McCall was not afraid of what people thought. He was not afraid of being seen. He was not afraid of living. He was finally free. And with Kelsey's hand clasped in his as they walked out of the building into the warm Seattle night, he knew he had made the right choice. Love was always worth the risk. Always. A year and a half later, Andrew McCall's life was unrecognizable compared to the man he used to be. The viral video scandal had lasted exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks of sensational headlines, baseless speculation, and journalists camping outside the McCall Industries building. But then something unexpected happened. The narrative shifted. Instead of destroying Andrew's reputation, the video humanized him. People did not see a cold CEO breaking corporate protocol. They saw a man finally allowing himself to feel. They saw vulnerability. They saw courage. The company's stock did not drop. In fact, it rose. Investors appreciated the transparency. Employees felt inspired. And Andrew learned a lesson that had taken him a decade to understand. Hiding protected no one. It only isolated. He and Kelsey made their relationship public 2 weeks after the video. They did not make any big announcement. They simply started appearing together. Corporate dinners, charity events, Saturday walks through Pike Place Market. And little by little, the city stopped seeing it as news and started seeing it as simply normal. Therapy with Courtney continued. 3 times a week at first, then twice, then once. Andrew unearthed layers of trauma he had not even known were there. He cried in sessions, he yelled in others, but he always went back. He always continued. And Kelsey was there. Not in every session, but in every night afterward, when he needed to process, when he needed to be held, when he needed to remember he was not alone. Daniel, Andrew's brother, became an active part of his life again. They had lunch every Monday, a tradition that began hesitantly but became sacred. They talked about their father, about the lost years, about how to rebuild something that had been broken. It was hard. Some conversations ended in uncomfortable silences, but they tried, and that was what mattered. 6 months after the kiss on the platform, Andrew proposed to Kelsey. It was not dramatic. It happened on a Sunday morning in her kitchen while they were making pancakes together. He simply stopped, set the spatula aside, and said, "Marry me." No ring, no rehearsed speech, just raw, honest truth. And Kelsey said yes before he even finished asking. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony by Lake Washington. Only close family and friends. Sophia was the maid of honor. Daniel was the best man. And when Andrew held Kelsey's hands during the vows, without gloves, without fear, without trembling, a reverent silence fell over everyone present, because everyone there knew what that moment meant. They knew the journey he had taken to reach that point. Life went on. Kelsey continued working at the company, now as Chief Operating Officer, a promotion she earned on her own merit, not because she was the CEO's wife. That was important to both of them, to keep their individuality, to maintain mutual respect, not to lose themselves in each other, but to grow together. And then, one April morning, Kelsey woke up feeling different, nauseous, tired, late. She took the test alone, in the bathroom, while Andrew slept. And when those 2 lines appeared clear and undeniable, she sat on the cold bathroom floor and cried. From joy, from fear, from a mixture of emotions so complex there was no name for it. When she told Andrew that night over dinner, she watched every emotion cross his face in seconds. Shock, fear, and finally a joy so pure it made his eyes shine. "We are having a baby," he repeated, as if he needed to hear it again to believe it. "A baby." "Yes." Kelsey placed her hand over his on the table. "And I know. You're scared, I am too. But we will manage. What if I do not know what I'm doing? What if I hurt someone? You will not hurt anyone. Andrew, you spent the last 2 years learning that your touch does not destroy, that it heals. And now you will have the chance to prove that in an entirely new way." He squeezed her hand, and then did something that surprised her. He stood, walked around the table, knelt, and placed both hands on her stomach. Still flat, still showing no signs. But he touched it as if he could already feel the life growing there. "Hi," he whispered to her belly. "I am your father, and I promise I will try to be good at this." Kelsey ran her fingers through his hair and knew he would be more than good. He would be extraordinary. The following months were a roller coaster. Kelsey's belly grew. Andrew swung between excitement and existential panic. They set up the nursery together, painting the walls a soft, neutral yellow because they wanted the baby's gender to remain a surprise. Andrew read parenting books with the same dedication he gave to corporate reports. Kelsey did prenatal yoga and tried not to stress about the changes in her body. And when the day finally came, on a December afternoon when Seattle was covered in a rare blanket of snow, everything happened too fast and too slow at the same time. Contractions began at 3 in the afternoon. By 6, they were at the hospital. By 10 that night, Kelsey was in the delivery room, gripping Andrew's hand so hard she was certain she was breaking bones. But he did not pull away, did not let go. He stayed right there, whispering encouragement, wiping sweat from her forehead, being exactly what she needed. And then at 11:42, the room filled with a newborn cry. "It's a boy," the doctor announced, lifting the small, red, perfect baby. Kelsey sobbed. exhausted and relieved and utterly in love with the tiny creature she had just brought into the world. The doctor quickly cleaned him, checked his vitals, and then looked at Andrew. "Do you want to hold your son?" Andrew froze. Kelsey saw the exact moment fear returned. She saw his hands tremble. She saw him look at the baby as if he were something impossible to touch. "Andrew," Kelsey said softly, reaching out for him, "you can do this. What if You can." He looked at her, searching for certainty, searching for courage. Then he took a deep breath, opened his arms, and allowed the doctor to place the baby in them. The world stopped. Andrew held his son for the first time, and something inside him broke and rebuilt all at once. The baby was so small, so light, so fragile, and he was holding him, truly holding him, without gloves, without fear, without barriers. His hands trembled, yes, but not from panic. They trembled from pure emotion. "Hi," Andrew whispered, his voice breaking. "Hi, little one. I'm your father." The baby opened his eyes, those unfocused, newborn blue eyes, and seemed to look straight at him. And Andrew felt something he had never felt before. It was not fear. It was not trauma. It was love. A love so deep, so overwhelming, he could barely breathe. Kelsey watched, her own vision blurred with emotion as Andrew rocked the baby gently in his arms. He was crying, she realized, silent tears running down his face as he looked at his son, as if he were witnessing a miracle. If you made it this far, you already know this story is not only about romance, but about healing, courage, and choices that change everything. Now I want to know, which part impacted you the most, and why? Comment, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and drop some hype to help this video reach even more people.